World leaders arriving in Sharm el-Sheikh ahead of participation at Peace Summit. After hostages were released, 1,900 freed Palestinian prisoners arrive in Ramallah and Gaza. And EU to restart Gaza-Egypt border monitoring mission Wednesday.
Welcome back. President Fattah al-Sisi on Monday welcomed the world leaders who arrived in Egypt to participate at Sharm el-Sheikh Peace Summit.
President Sisi and U.S. President Donald Trump will co-chair the summit, which aims to put an end to the war in the Gaza Strip ahead of moving into the second phase of Gaza reconstruction in order to consolidate peace and stability in the region. More details.
World leaders arrived in Egypt to participate at the Sharm el-Sheikh Peace Summit. The summit, co-chaired by Sisi and Trump, aims to put an end to the war in the Gaza Strip ahead of moving into the second phase of Gaza reconstruction in order to consolidate peace and stability in the region. Figures arriving included Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev, as well as King of Bahrain Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa and UAE's Vice President Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Sisi also received former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, Omani Foreign Minister Badr bin Hamad Al Busaidi, Jordan's King Abdullah II, Qatar's Emir Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. He also received Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan upon their arrival in Sharm el-Sheikh. Other arrivals for the Sharm el-Sheikh summit included Kuwait's Deputy Emir and Saudi Foreign Minister Saud al-Faisal, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney.
And Egypt on Monday hosts an international summit for peace in the Middle East that will be co-chaired by President Fattah al-Sisi and U.S. President Donald Trump with the aim of putting an end to the war in Gaza Strip.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said he will not take part in the summit due to religious holidays. Earlier, the presidency said U.S. President Donald Trump put forward a proposal for Netanyahu to attend the summit over a phone call with President Sisi. More details.
Egypt on Monday hosts an international summit for peace in the Middle East with the aim of putting an end to the war in the Gaza Strip. World leaders from more than 20 countries began arriving in Egypt ahead of participation in the Sharm el-Sheikh Summit for Peace, which also aims to consolidate peace and stability in the region. The presidency said Sisi and his U.S. counterpart will deliver two statements at the summit. The presidency said the summit, co-chaired by Sisi and Trump, will deliver two statements. Presidential spokesman said both Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will take part in the Sharm el-Sheikh Summit for Gaza. Sisi and Trump will hold a meeting on the sidelines of the summit, as well as bilateral meetings with participating leaders. The summit is expected to witness the signing of a document to end the war in the Palestinian territory of the Gaza Strip. The attendees include Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul Ghait, French President Emmanuel Macron, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and Pedro Sanchez, Prime Minister of Spain.
President Fattah al-Sisi on Monday received the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, who arrived in the South Sinai Sharm el-Sheikh resort to attend the International Peace Summit. The summit, which begins later today, will support ending the more than 2-year Israeli genocide war in Gaza after a breakthrough ceasefire deal. President Sisi's office said the summit aims to end the war in Gaza and usher in a new page of peace and regional stability, in line with U.S. President Donald Trump's vision.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi decided to grant U.S. President Donald Trump the Nile Medal in appreciation of his peace efforts. The U.S. President made a pivotal role for putting an end to the war in Gaza, the last such effort in a series of moves that included attempts to stem the Ukrainian war.
And cheering crowds received the Palestinian prisoners released from Israeli jails who arrived at the West Bank city of Ramallah and also in Gaza. Earlier Monday, the remaining 20 living Israeli hostages were released and handed over to the Israeli side, while the bodies of the remaining 28 hostages are also to be handed over as part of the deal. Details follow.
Hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and captives released from Israeli jails arrived to cheering crowds in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank and in Gaza on Sunday. The Israelis freed more than 1,900 prisoners and detainees on Monday after Hamas released all remaining living hostages held in Gaza under the ceasefire deal. The Hamas Front Prisoners Office said the buses arrived in Ramallah in the Israeli-occupied West Bank after leaving Offer prison. At least one bus also crossed into the Gaza Strip. Earlier on Monday, Hamas released all 20 remaining living hostages as part of the ceasefire, posing 2 years of war that pummeled the Gaza Strip, killing tens of thousands of Palestinians. Under the deal, the Israelis are to allow a surge of food and aid supplies into famine-stricken Gaza. Trump will discuss the U.S. proposed deal and post-war plans with other leaders in Egypt later Monday. Gaza's health ministry said the bodies of 60 Palestinians have been recovered from under the rubble of destroyed buildings and brought to hospitals in the last 24 hours. That brought the number of recovered bodies to 200 in the past 4 days, since the ceasefire between Hamas and the Israelis took effect and Israeli occupation troops pulled back from some parts of Gaza. The ministry says many dead are still under the rubble, particularly in areas inaccessible to first responders. The Israeli war on Gaza killed more than 67,800 Palestinians. The ceasefire started on Friday and included the exchange of Palestinian prisoners for hostages. The later stages of the Israeli-Hamas ceasefire are still being worked out. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he is profoundly relieved that the Israeli hostages in Gaza have regained their freedom and will be reunited with their families after the immense suffering they have endured. Guterres in a statement also reiterated his call for the release of the remains of the deceased hostages. The statement was issued from Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, where world leaders were gathering to throw their weight behind the Gaza ceasefire deal.
And now, dear viewers, we are watching a live coverage for U.S. President Donald Trump, who is leaving Tel Aviv, heading to the Egyptian resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh to participate in Gaza Peace Summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, which is expected to start shortly with the attendance of many world leaders and international organizations. Earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump addressed the Israeli Knesset, and then he is heading now to Egypt. And tens of thousands of Palestinians who survived 2 years of Israeli aggression in Gaza Strip continued returning to their homes in rubble-strewn neighborhoods in Gaza City, north of the enclave, as the ceasefire was holding.
Since the U.S. brokered ceasefire came into effect on Friday, a partial Israeli withdrawal from Gaza began under a plan for ending the war in the Palestinian enclave. More details.
Tens of thousands of Palestinians who survived 2 years of Israeli aggression in the Gaza Strip continued returning to their homes in rubble-strewn neighborhoods in Gaza City, north of the enclave, as the ceasefire was holding. Since the U.S. brokered ceasefire came into effect on Friday, a partial Israeli withdrawal from Gaza began under a plan for ending the war in the Palestinian enclave. Under the plan, the withdrawing Israeli forces will be replaced by a multinational force coordinated by a U.S.-led command center in Israeli territories. Returning Palestinians said the bare minimum to sustain life is not available because of the scale of destruction. One case is Ismail al-Jamal. He was shocked at the level of destruction upon returning to his home in Sheikh Radwan neighborhood of Gaza City. He said no one home in the whole street is standing. Another Gaza resident said all she wanted is a tent and a sense of safety that would allow her to stay in Sheikh Radwan without being afraid of thieves. The United Nations Satellite Center estimated that 83% of all structures in Gaza City had been destroyed or had some damage by late September. It has said around 78% of structure across all of Gaza had been destroyed or sustained damage by July. Some 61 million tons of debris will need to be cleared across the territory, according to the UN Environment Programme. The World Bank has estimated that rebuilding Gaza will require more than $50 billion.
The European Union will Wednesday restart a civilian mission to monitor the Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt in support of a ceasefire deal, the bloc's top diplomat said on Monday. Kaya Kalas posted on social media after Hamas released the first group of Israeli hostages as part of the U.S. brokered agreement that the EU stands ready to do its part. She said this mission can play an important role in supporting the ceasefire.
President Donald Trump told Israeli lawmakers on Monday that their country had no more to achieve on the battlefield and must work towards peace in the Middle East after 2 years of war.
Trump promised to help rebuild Gaza, which has been devastated during the conflict, and urged the Palestinians to return forever from the path of terror and violence.
U.S. President said that the Middle East will be a magnificent region soon. Trump was addressing the Israeli parliament on Monday. He said the day marks a historical dawn for a new Middle East, described White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff as a great man, and peace would not have been achieved without his presence. He expressed appreciation to Arab and Islamic countries that helped reach a deal to end the war on Gaza. He said the Middle East region is heading towards a golden era and Arab and Islamic countries are peace partners. He said by the ceasefire deal, a painful nightmare for the Israelis and Palestinians has ended. He said hatred speech has fruited nothing but murder and destruction. Trump said the day marks not only an end to the war, but a start of an era of peace and coexistence in the region. He said the basis for development must be boosted in Gaza for its people to achieve a flourishing future they deserve. He also said he was able to end 8 wars in 8 months. Trump said he's working on settling the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The U.S. president said it will be great to seal a peace deal with Iran.
French President Emmanuel Macron on Monday hailed the release of Hamas of Israeli hostages in the Gaza Strip, saying with the release peace becomes possible for Israel, for Gaza and for the region.
The French leader's remarks came upon his arrival in Egypt for participation at a summit that will consolidate a Gaza ceasefire that began on Friday and is expected to be accompanied by a surge of humanitarian aid into Gaza Strip. Here is the full story.
French President Emmanuel Macron on Monday hailed the release by Hamas of Israeli hostages in the Gaza Strip, saying with the release peace becomes possible for the Israelis, for Gaza and for the region. After arriving in Egypt's Sharm el-Sheikh for the peace summit on Gaza, Macron stressed that France will have a role to play by the side of the Palestinian National Authority and will cooperate with Egypt in organizing a Gaza reconstruction conference. The French president also said France will help with humanitarian issues, notably in caring for the Palestinian children who were wounded in the Israeli war. A Gaza ceasefire that began on Friday is expected to be accompanied by a surge of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, parts of which are experiencing famine. After 2 years of Israeli aggression, much of Gaza has been reduced to rubble, and the territory's roughly 2 million surviving residents continue to struggle in desperate conditions. Under the deal, the Israelis agreed to reopen 5 border crossings, which will help ease the flow of food and other supplies into Gaza. So far, the Israeli occupation army has withdrawn from much of Gaza City, the southern city of Khan Yunis and other areas. Israeli troops remain in most of the southern city of Rafah, towns of Gaza's far north, and the wide strip along the length of Gaza's border with the Israelis. The peace plan also calls for an Egypt and Jordan. According to the plan, Israeli occupation forces would leave areas as those forces deploy. About 200 U.S. troops are now in the Israeli-controlled areas to monitor the ceasefire.
And the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's office said he will say his government is ready to play a leading role in Gaza's reconstruction at the Peace Summit in Sharm el-Sheikh on Monday. Starmer is set to announce humanitarian funding, part of a broader aid commitment for Gaza to help repair water, sanitation and hygiene services decimated by 2 years of war. According to Downing Street press release, Starmer was expected to say at the summit that today is the first crucial phase of ending this war, and now we must deliver the second phase in full. The UK government also announced its decision to host a 3-day conference on Gaza's recovery and reconstruction. And by that, dear viewers, we come to the end of Panorama News. I'm Sheen Adel, and I'm joined by my colleague Mahis Rabia. Thank you, Mahis.
Thank you so much, Shireen. Thank you so much, our dear viewers, and stay tuned for more updates on Nile TV International. Don't go away, and for more updates, follow us on www.nileinternational.net.
Welcome back, and you are still watching our special coverage for Gaza Peace Summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, and we are joined by Professor Samir Raghib, joining us from Sharm el-Sheikh, political analyst. Good afternoon, Professor Samir.
Good afternoon.
So, sir, how do you see preparations for Gaza Peace Summit?
The preparation in the high level of preparation from the presidential level, ministerial level, security, the peace city Sharm el-Sheikh in its wonderful image, and all of people in Sharm el-Sheikh, ordinary people, politicals, and officials are ready to welcome Mr. Trump in City of Peace.
Yes. So, Professor Samir, how does this summit reflect Egypt's pivotal role in achieving peace and stability in the whole region after 2 years of war?
Yes, the negotiation of Sharm el-Sheikh assures the pivotal role that Egypt and assures that Egypt as a regional and international player that no one can replace it.
Yes.
Egypt reached for the point after a dark tunnel of negotiation. Nobody imagines that during 2 or 3 days of negotiation to reach for this end, that paves the way for the peaceful settlement, for a massacre in Gaza, and paves the way for the next stage for establishing an independent Palestinian state.
So, sir, how do you describe the scene in Sharm el-Sheikh as we have nearly 20 countries and organizations participating in the summit?
This reflects the weight of Egypt
Yes.
and the size of the achievement. We have over 20 president and prime minister and the United Nations Security General, the European Union, Arab League. This reflects what size of the achievement and the weight of Egypt and the security in the peace city in Sharm el-Sheikh as well.
So, can you shed more light on the main targets of the summit as announced by Egypt?
First of all, it's a ceremony for celebrating the achievements. Secondly, it's a big chance for the donors for rebuilding Gaza, reconstructing Gaza, and also for preparation for the United Nations bus for this agreement. We must have a United Nations Security Council resolution to make this track in United Nations Security Council track. Not be a bilateral or multilateral agreement or treaty, must be under the United Nations umbrella. This needs support from the permanent members countries and the big countries and the countries that concerned with the Palestinian issue.
And sir, how?
After this, the next stage needs grand tours and the countries that support the ceasefire and the reconstruction.
And sir, how would the participation of a host of world leaders help in granting the success of the talks to end the war and put more pressure on Israel to abide by the resolutions and by the agreement that will be declared today?
Yes, during the speech of Mr. Trump in Knesset, everyone remarked that the Israeli people admire Trump. So Trump has the capability to apply pressure over Netanyahu and the cabinet to respect this agreement. When Trump joined this ceremony in Sharm el-Sheikh, this adds more weight for the agreement that under the umbrella and the supervision of America and Mr. Donald Trump. This is important to join the ceremony in peace city, our city of peace.
And sir, what is the role the world expects from Europe and its leaders in supporting peace efforts and in help in reconstructing Gaza?
Yes, supporting the reconstruction as a donor and also in the United Nations Security Council track, European country and the European Union will support continuing the peace process and continuing the ceasefire and the next stages of Trump proposal of complete withdrawal of IDF from Gaza sector.
I'd like to thank you, Professor Samir Rahib, a political analyst. Thank you, sir, for being with us. And the viewers should break in. We'll be back, so stay tuned.
نشكر فخامة الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي على جهوده لشعب غزة.
I stand before you today beneath the emblem of the United Nations to confirm the historic decision of the British government to recognize the state of Palestine.
Yesterday, Australia recognized the state of Palestine.
Lithuania has acted. We recognize Palestine together with Ireland, Norway and Spain. We call for a permanent ceasefire, the release of all hostages and the protection of all civilians.
Cannot abandon the hope for peace. Italy strongly supports the dream of the Palestinian people to have a state. We will continue to support the Palestinian Authority in its reform.
As the UN marks the 80th anniversary, we call on all member states to recognize Palestine and to act in solidarity with its people.
Belgium is giving out a strong political and diplomatic signal to the world today by joining the group of countries that announces the recognition of the state of Palestine in the margin of this high-level week of the United Nations General Assembly.
Portugal formally recognized the state of Palestine as a sovereign state with full rights.
Je déclare que la France reconnaît aujourd'hui l'État de Palestine.
كل الشكر بالتقدير لمصر لفخامة الرئيس والشعب المصري. الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي على جهوده لشعب غزة.
I stand before you today beneath the emblem of the United Nations to confirm the historic decision of the British government to recognize the state of Palestine.
Yesterday, Australia recognized the state of Palestine.
Lithuania has acted. We recognize Palestine together with Ireland, Norway and Spain. We call for a permanent ceasefire, the release of all hostages and the protection of all civilians.
Cannot abandon the hope for peace. Italy strongly supports the dream of the Palestinian people to have a state. We will continue to support the Palestinian Authority in its reform.
As the UN marks the 80th anniversary, we call on all member states to recognize Palestine and to act in solidarity with its people.
Belgium is giving out a strong political and diplomatic signal to the world today by joining the group of countries that announces the recognition of the State of Palestine in the margin of this high-level week of the United Nations General Assembly.
Portugal formally recognized the State of Palestine as a sovereign state with full rights.
Je déclare que la France reconnaît aujourd'hui l'État de Palestine.
كل الشكر بالتقدير لمصر ولفخامة الرئيس والشعب المصري.
Welcome back, dear viewers, and you are